Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Valona Sulay, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of MSCCB. We are excited to have you here for today's webinar titled Ethical AI, Addressing Bias and Transparency with ISO IC 42001. As we continue to witness the rapid development of AI technologies, ensuring fairness, transparency, and accountability in these systems is more critical than ever. In this session, we will explore how ISO IC 42001 can play a key role in addressing bias and promoting transparency in AI systems. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Varun Prasad, will guide us through this insightful discussion. With his extensive experience in the field, he will help us explore how this standard can help organizations manage ethical challenges in AI and work towards more equitable outcomes. Before we begin, just a quick reminder to everyone, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on our website. Also, please feel free to submit any questions you have during the presentation because we will address them at the end of this session during the Q&A. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Varun Prasad to introduce himself and continue with the session.
Thank you, Valona. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone from wherever you're joining. My name is Varun Prasad. I'm currently a managing director with BDO as a part of the third-party attestation practice. So we work with tech companies from early stage startups to large multinational corporations and helping them with their various attestation needs, like various different ISO certifications, SOC 2 and C5 and various different kinds of reports. I have over 15 plus years of experience in the field of IT risk management, compliance, and audits. I started working with IT general controls and then moved on to work on more technical controls and areas, cybersecurity related audits. Cloud security and privacy has sort of been my focus for the last few years. And with the rapid changing technology, more so for the past year or so, have been working a lot on AI system audits. And definitely in the past few months, specifically in the area of ISO 42001 as such. So AI is everywhere, right? I mean, even though you may not be using an AI application or an AI system on a daily basis, artificial intelligence impacts everyone's life in more ways than one. Right from school classrooms to large corporate boardrooms, AI is playing a very, very important role in everyone's life. These are really interesting times where companies are racing with each other to come up with more innovative AI solutions, uh, invent and train models in cheaper ways and see how they can use AI for really powerful use cases. However, at the same time, the dangers, questions, concerns around these technologies are just continuing to grow. They are not going away. So it becomes even more critical to make sure that as you are building these systems, one has to implement the appropriate controls, safeguards, or guardrails to ensure that some of these risks that we talked about are actually addressed and mitigated. And that's really the role of ISO 42001 here. ISO 42001 standard is a very structured, comprehensive, and exhaustive standard that includes different types of control at every phase or every stage of the AI system life cycle that really helps address and mitigate some of the inherent concerns or inherent challenges that comes in with AI. And that's what we are going to explore and see in today's session on how that's happening. Ethical AI, right? Ethical AI is not just one thing. It's not just one word. It's more like a catch-all phrase. It refers to several different things. Ethical AI actually refers to a set of multiple different principles or rules or requirements that really govern or that really drive the design, deployment, and development of AI systems to promote the safe, secure, ethical, responsible, and reliable use of these technologies. We need to understand that AI systems are fundamentally very different than the traditional application software that we are all familiar with. Now, if you take any enterprise application or any enterprise software that we are all familiar with or that we use today, they are called rule-based systems, or they are based on rule-based logic. So what happens is, one application has a set of inputs based on certain conditions or certain logic. That data would be processed and we will have an output. However, in AI, something is happening is much more deeper and much more profound out here. When it comes to AI, these systems have inbuilt cognitive abilities. They are able to think and make decisions like what we do as humans. So any AI system to start off is trained on a set of basic data, what is known as training data. And based on what the application or system continues to learn from this training data, it is actually making predictions or generating new content. So because of the way these systems are just designed and they are just set up to work, the risks and challenges are also much, much different and much, much greater. So AI systems in itself, because of their inherent cognitive nature, introduces a set of very unique and novel risks that we have not been, exposed to, or we have not been familiar to all these years. So that's why these systems also need what we call specialized or nuanced type of controls to help address and mitigate these risks. Now, AI can be used in many different ways, as we know that there are several different use cases or several different systems or applications where AI is used. Now, if you take a risk-based approach, when you have applications or systems where AI is used to make a decision, or AI is influencing the system to make a decision, then those kind of systems are of highest risk. Now, when I say a significant decision or an important decision, what this really means is that if AI is used to make a decision as to if a specific service needs to be provided or not to an individual, then those are like highly critical or highly risk system. For example, think of a bank. In a bank, if AI is used to decide who should be given a credit card, who should be given a loan, then those are very, very critical use cases. Now, similarly, if AI is used to determine which student should be selected to study in a college or school, or if AI is used as a part of the hiring process to determine what kind of employee, which individual should be given a job. These systems are very, very important and very, very critical. So because of the far-reaching consequences, and because of the important impact that these systems could have, uh, definitely we need to make sure that these systems are designed and built with strong controls at all different layers. And moving on, so AI is also sort of perceived as a black box, because in traditional application software, we know what the logic is. We know what are the rules based on which the application is working and the application is giving us the desired output. But however, remember, in an AI system, the system is learning and then trying to predict or trying to create content. So a lot of times an AI system or an AI application is thought of as a black box, where we don't really know what's really happening under the hood, or how the system is working to come up with the outputs and things like that. So that's why there's a lack of trust. And again, we want to make sure that we have right controls to ensure that transparency, so that people are able to start using AI system with a little bit more of confidence. Yeah, lastly, we already know that different countries and different states are coming up with new laws and regulations almost on a daily basis, that provides requirements and that provides certain rules on how AI systems should be developed and used in a specific jurisdiction. So ISO 42001 also helps us comply with and meet these specific laws and regulations as such that's required. Okay, what are these AI principles? What are these ethical AI principles? I did mention that, it refers to several different things, and it refers to a collection of various items. Now, again, depending on where you look at, there are different sets of AI principles. The NIST here in the United States has a list of 7 AI principles. Now, OECD has about 5 AI principles. However, I'm going to talk about some of fairness are probably the two basically we want to understand how an AI system really works. What are the various factors it considers in making its decisions? How is it really interpreting, or how is it really using these training data to come up with the predictions? So understanding that, or having a solid documentation to explain all of that, is what is called explainability and transparability. Moving on the right, um, if we start using AI systems at the government level, or or at the state level, or if AI systems are used where the output of the system really can have impact on a groups of individuals or large communities, we want to make sure that it is human centered. It is fair to every person who is really using that system. It is socially just, equitable, and doing the right thing. So being human centered and socially appropriate is a very, very critical thing that we want to keep in mind. The human rights part of it, where every individual who's using the AI system needs to be respected and represented, is very, very important. Coming down, uh, data is the fuel that drives these AI systems, right? So having having a high quantity and quality of data is very, very important for any AI system to work appropriately and make sure it's producing the accurate results. So whenever we talk about data, I think privacy becomes very, very important and very, very key as such. So from that perspective, any discussion of AI is really incomplete if we don't talk about the related privacy risks. So when we build an AI system, or when we use an AI system, one has to ensure that the privacy related commitments or the privacy related requirements are also met appropriately. Um, so any organization's privacy commitments or privacy requirements change drastically the moment it starts using AI, because when it's starting to use or develop AI, it's automatically starting to deal with so much more quantity and quality of data and information there. So they have to make sure that the appropriate privacy requirements of the jurisdiction these systems are deployed in are met as such. Now on the left, I think accountability is also very, very key. Even though it's really an AI system, or a or an application making decisions, or telling us what to do or what not to do, there needs to be appropriate accountability and responsibility as to how the system works and how the system is built and developed as such. So these are really the most critical principles of ethical AI. And one needs to keep this in mind and ensure that the appropriate controls are selected and implemented in the right way. All right. So what is bias? So we said that bias and fairness is probably the most critical risk, or the biggest danger of AI system one needs to take care about. So bias can really creep into the AI system at various different stages. It can happen in many different ways. Now, data bias. So as I mentioned earlier, data is really the foundation on which these AI systems work. So having the right type of training data is very, very important. This is the first phase where bias can creep into the system. So when we are selecting data from various sources to train a model or train a system, one needs to ensure that this data is coming from the correct sources, and there is really no bias or no selectivity issues out here. The other important point is to make sure that uh, the user groups are appropriately represented in the training data being used. For example, let's just say that our training data consists of 100 records. And if out of the 100 records, let's say that 75 records are belonging to males and only 25 records are belonging to females, I mean, this in itself is a huge bias, right? You have a 75-25 split. So the chances that the output of the system are going to be wrong is very, very high. So that's why it's important to make sure that when one chooses the training data set, we want to make sure that the correct type of data is chosen, and also the training data set is, appropriately represents the different groups in an equal way or equal manner as such. Um, okay, now the next stage where bias can creep in is when we are actually developing or building these models or building these systems. So this is referred to as algorithmic bias, because the way in which the algorithms are designed or the way in which the algorithms work uh, could also lead to bias. Now, you know, like I just mentioned, it's important to make sure we have the correct training data set. Okay, so we have the correct training data set, but if the training data is not utilized by the model in the correct way, that is going to create a lot of errors and it's going to lead to a lot of inaccuracy out there. So the way the model is actually built and designed and how it is coded to use these training data is very, very important. So again, the way the algorithm is defined, structured, and the way it's really coded is very, very important, because if there are issues out there, again, you can have bias. Now, the last one is a very interesting case. It's called the system output bias. What really happens is that sometimes the AI system might give you the correct results or the right results, but as humans, the way we interpret those results may not be correct. Now, the system might tell me to do something, but from my execution or from my understanding, is something that is not spoken about a lot, but however, something that one needs to keep in mind as such. Uh, all right, moving on. So, all right, bias in AI is real. These are not just theoretical concepts, or these are not something that people found in research. But there have been applications in the real world, in real life, that were being used. And once those applications were scrutinized, they were found to be biased as such. Now, let's start with the leftmost item here. So Amazon, few years ago, they used to use an AI-based hiring tool. So this tool was basically used to automatically scan a lot of resumes and shortlist which individuals, or which individuals should really be considered for a job. Now, what this tool is doing is, all it's doing is just basically reading resumes and looking for specific keywords. What happened is that, unfortunately, the way this algorithm or the way this system was built, uh, it was choosing more male candidates than female candidates for whatever reason. And I think once they looked at the root cause of this came down to being a representation bias. Now, this is the example we talked about earlier, wherein the training data set for this algorithm included a lot of resumes from males rather than females. So this algorithm was trained uh, using keywords that were found from the resumes of males rather than from the keywords that were found in the resumes of females, causing this algorithm to go wrong. Now, of course, Amazon was quick to identify this issue, and they really shut down this whole process, and they stopped using the AI tool, as a part of their hiring processes as such. The one you see here on the middle is something very, very critical. So Compass is actually a popular application that is used here in the US court as a part of US law enforcement, and as a part of the US criminal justice system. This tool helps identify which criminal defendants could create a crime again. Now, over time, unfortunately, it was shown that this tool had like a racial bias. Unfortunately, the tool started to predict that individuals from one specific race were more likely to recommit a crime when compared to individuals from other races. But the reality and the statistics showed something very, very different. Now, in this case, they found that the tool was actually trained using the correct set of data. There were no issues in the base training data as such. But here, the way that the algorithm was trained, the way that the algorithm was using the training data to learn was not correct. So this is a classic case of algorithmic bias where you have the training data was correct, but the way that the algorithm was set up to use the training data was not done correctly. That was leading to bias in the final output. Now on the right side, again, this is an AI tool which was apparently being used in several hospitals and several clinics across the US. Um, so what this tool was saying is this tool was used to predict which individuals could have a specific disease or could have a specific illness at a later date. Again, this tool was found to show a racial bias towards into persons of color. What they found out was that this tool was basically trained on the insurance claim data for the past, like for a specific period of 10 years or a specific period of 15 years. Now, again, insurance claim data alone is not enough or is alone not sufficient to predict which individual could have a specific illness or which individual could have a specific type of disease. Now, there may be various reasons on why certain individuals have requested for a claim on their insurance during a specific period of time. But however, just because certain individuals have requested for an insurance claim does not mean that those individuals are going to, be sick again or there's going to be a disease again. So that's why this is a mix of probably both algorithmic bias and a little bit of data bias, more so data bias, because the training data is not sufficient. Maybe the right quality of data was used, but I'm sorry, maybe the right quantity of data was used, but not the quality as such. So that's really why something that we need to consider. All right, here we are. Let's talk about ISO 42001 and why it is so important. So I think the ISO 42001 standard was introduced in late December 2023. This was the world's first AI management system standard. It includes the requirements and provides certain guidance for establishing, implementing, managing, and improving an AI management system. It provides certain principles for the governance of AI systems as such. Now, this standard is applicable for all organizations who are actually not only building AI systems, but also using AI systems. Now, let's say that there is a company which is buying a popular third-party AI tool or a third-party AI system and using it within their environment to do different things. Yes, the standard applies to them as well. So, depending on the way in which you are using AI, you might be designing certain things, you might be building or developing certain things, or you might actually be using an already existing AI system out there. So depending on what specific role you play, the standard definitely applies to them. It applies to companies of various different sizes. Mitigate or address some of these unique different risks of these systems. Um, for individuals who are familiar with various different ISO standards, probably ISO 27001, which is a very, very popular ISMS or information security management system, it is important, or it will be good to know that ISO 42001 follows the same structure and the high level requirements as that of other existing ISO management standards. For example, ISO 42001 requires us to document the use of the AI system and the role of the organization. As I mentioned earlier, the company might not really be developing an AI system. It might be actually be using an existing AI system for various use cases. So here is where they actually document how a company is going to use AI and what's really going to be the role of the company. Now, similar to other ISO standards, uh, you are required to complete a risk assessment and prepare a statement of applicability, wherein you get to identify and choose which specific controls from the standard are applicable to the organization and which controls may not be applicable because of the way in which you're using the AI system for as such. And lastly, yes, 42001 also requires a conduct of an annual internal audit, and perform very formal and very documented management reviews as such. And we'll probably we'll be looking into all of these in a little bit more detail as we go along. All right. So how does 42001 really help in promoting AI? We'll really look at some of the key factors or key features of the standard out here, which is going to help us mitigate or address some of these ethical AI concerns or some of these unique risks posed by AI. Now, I just talked about how a management review is very, very critical in the AI, in the ISO standard. So as a part of the management review, it is good to establish an AI ethics board. Now, the role of the AI ethics board would be to probably come up with certain rules or certain guidelines based on which AI systems should be developed and used. Approve the controls that have to be put in place or implemented to address some of the unique risks of AI, and review the continued implementation of these controls from time to time to make sure that the company is responsibly using AI and it's building and using AI in a trustworthy manner as such. This standard requires the organization to define its AI objectives. So when the company is defining or documenting AI objectives, they can incorporate or specifically call out what AI principles matters to that organization and ensure that those principles are actually addressed as a part of how they use AI or how they develop AI. Um, Now, similar to how other ISO standards, 42001 requires the creation of a specific AI policy. This AI policy should be comprehensive and detailed enough and specifically call out the rules, requirements, any guidelines or procedures that needs to be followed within the organization for the implementing and use of AI systems, and more importantly, how the ethical AI principles or how the applicable ethical AI concepts will have to be addressed at every stage during the company as such. Um, Now, AI is a cross-functional endeavor. Ensuring that responsible AI or ensuring trustworthy AI is not really the responsibility of just one team. It's not just about the audit team or the compliance team or the privacy team that has to make sure it works. It has to be a cross-functional effort, where we need to have collaboration between various parts of the organization, including product management, including operations, including security, engineering, and the developers, and all of that. So as a part of the standard, it's important accountability and responsibility for different groups or different individuals in the organization on when it comes to the governance and the ethical development and use of the AI system as such. And not just assignment of responsibility, it's also critical to provide the appropriate level of training for these individuals who are involved in the various stages of AI system development and operations as such, so that they have the appropriate awareness and appropriate understanding as to what they need to do. Now, in each step that we are talking here, it's very critical to mention and very, very critical to inculcate the specific ethical AI principles that really matter, be it as a part of training or be it as a part of assigning accountabilities or defining job responsibilities. It has to be specifically called out that the systems have to be built or used in a way so that the specific ethical AI rules are kept in mind and they are addressed throughout. Um, Yeah, again, when we do internal audits, it's important to talk about the effectiveness of the specific controls in addressing maybe bias and transparency and other ethical principles are kept in mind. We will be talking a little bit in detail about risk and system impact assessments in the next slide. So I'm probably going to skip through that. Yeah, and I think the last point here is that, as I mentioned earlier, um, the way 42001 standard is structured, it includes controls at every phase of the system development lifecycle or at every level of the system development lifecycle, right from the initial phase of selecting, going through how models are like developed and designed and how they are really monitored even after they are put into use. Okay. Yeah, so for those of us who are familiar with other ISO standards or other ISO management systems, risk assessment is a very, very important step. It's one of the mandatory clauses, and in addition to the risk assessments that we are required to perform, 42001 also requires us to uh, do what's called a system impact assessment as such. So a system impact assessment is something that's going to happen at a much more detailed and granular level. And this is an extra step that we have to do for AI systems, again, because of the complexity and because of the criticality of AI systems as such. We have to go like one layer deeper or one layer higher and to do more things. What you see on the left here, those are the aspects that we really cover in a risk assessment. Now, a risk assessment to me happens at a more higher level or at a more organizational level. The macroscopic risk that's confronting an organization really have to be understood and really have to be identified at this stage. When I say macroscopic risk, it's more about the readiness of an organization to really develop or use AI. Now, AI need not be the solution for everything. Often we get carried away and think that AI can't be thrown at every problem and hope that it's going to solve that. So the organization really needs to consider the relevance and complexity of AI systems and AI solutions, how they are going to use AI, what are they going to do with the AI systems, is it really appropriate, is it really relevant? Those are probably some of the important questions they need to consider. Secondly, does the company handle AI related issues or AI related principles? Do they have the appropriate technology? When I say technology, it's the entire tool stack. Do you have the appropriate development tools? Do you have the appropriate monitoring tools, the data management tools in place in order to safely and securely develop and use AI system? Uh, as we saw earlier, data is really the most foundational or fundamental part of AI systems. So the company needs to be in a position to define and implement strong data governance or data management principles. And that's something that they have to consider as a part of the risk assessment process. Now, lastly, compliance. Um, as I called out earlier, um, there are AI related laws or AI related regulations in literally every country or every state, and that list is just growing as we speak. So, as a part of the risk assessment process, companies need to consider what are the additional legal or compliance risk as a part of using AI, and that's something to define and document as impact assessment really means. Now, a system impact assessment happens more at a microscopic level. It is more so for a sometimes you can have where one model is used for multiple different use cases. So that's why it's very, very important, or it's recommended to perform the system impact assessment at a use case level, because the risks and challenges really vary depending on how I use AI. Sometimes you might have an entire application that's built and driven by AI, or sometimes you have an existing application where just one very small feature is really driven by AI as such. So that's why the impact or the specific risks or challenges related to systems will vary depending on how you're planning to use it as such. So, as a part of the system impact assessment, we have to consider the safety and security related impacts, the impact of the system on the individuals who are using the system, or the groups of individuals or communities as such. So these are key aspects that the standard requires us to specifically evaluate and document from time to time for every specific AI system that we really use. Again, this is recommended to be done at a use case level because the impact really depends on the way AI is being deployed or AI is being used. It can't be like a one size fits all, but more context dependent, if you will, and hence it's very critical to get this right as such, because it is in this step do we identify which specific ethical AI principles are going to be applicable, and based on the specific principles that really matter, we would go ahead and choose and implement the appropriate controls to kind of mitigate that. All right, so this is the AI system lifecycle diagram that's provided by OECD. Now, actually, OECD has a lot of good documentation, good material related to AI to help us really learn and spread awareness on that. So yeah, this is really the AI system life cycle, and it really showcases the various steps that needs to occur in the development and deployment of an AI system. Now, the ISO 42001 standard actually includes controls at literally every step in this process. That's why it's a very structured and a very comprehensive standard where we do have controls at every step or every stage of the AI system life cycle to ensure that some of these unique risks of AI are actually addressed as such. Now, I would not be going through every control in the standard today. And I would be really touching upon some of the very important or some of the most critical controls that one really has to understand. So the controls within the standard can be largely classified or can be largely divided into three buckets or three domains, if you will: data governance, model development, operations, and monitoring. So we're going to like delve into each of these domains and probably look at some of the key controls, maybe about 3 or 4 controls in each domain, as to why they are important and how they are going to help us really address some of these challenges like bias or explainability and transparency as such. All right, so let's really start with data governance controls, because data governance is really the first step, and it's important that we need to get this right. Now, the 42001 has several standards or several requirements or controls across every phase of the data management process. So to start off with, the standard requires us to define and implement specific data management practices. We need to have a data management or a data governance strategy or policy, which really dictates the way a company is going to use data. It's going to include, or it has to include, requirements for the how the accuracy and integrity of data is going to be maintained throughout the various different pipelines and throughout the different life cycle. How the transparency and explainability aspects would be addressed, or are required to be addressed as we use data in various different ways. And as I called out earlier, privacy is a very important part of it. Now, I understand that 42001 is not about privacy per se, but yeah, any discussion of AI is really incomplete if we don't really document, or if we really don't determine the privacy impacts it's going to have. So as a part of your data comprehensive data management or data governance strategy, we also need to include that Are we going to use personal information? Are we going to use health information for training these models? If so, what are the additional privacy implications that could likely have? So it's something that for us to consider and put it down. The next phase is the data acquisition and preparation. Now, this is about ensuring that we select the data from the correct data sources. Sometimes the data source may be correct, but the type of data that we are picking may not be sufficient or may not be appropriate. So it's important to consider that the correct data categories and data attributes are actually chosen to train the model or to train the system as such. Now, a lot of times the raw data would need some sort of cleaning or massaging as such to make sure that it does not include any erroneous records or invalid records. And yeah, there are controls within the 42001 standard for the preparation of data or the cleaning of data, and companies are required to specifically document and evidence as to what cleaning or what preparation procedures went through. Next up, data quality. Now, this is the most important control, or in my opinion, in the data governance bucket as such, because this is the step or this is the control where organizations or companies should ensure that the data set that's going to be used to train the models is diverse, is inclusive, and it's really free from bias. We have to ensure that the training data set is representative of the users of the system, or it really includes representatives from all of the end users who would be potentially using the system as such. So having a very, very strong control to ensure that the quality of the data set is accurate, it is appropriate, and maybe signed off by the appropriate individuals is very, very critical before we move on to actually building the model or really developing the model. Now, the last up, data provenance. Data provenance is nothing but logging of data. So let's say we pick raw data from a specific training source or from a specific source. What really happens to the data throughout the entire pipeline or throughout the entire life cycle has to be documented and defined, because this is going to help us understand the transparency and understand the accountability of what's really happening inside. So ensuring that logging happens at every layer, starting from the data layer, is very, very critical. All right, so let's talk about model design and development. Again, a very, very important phase as such. So I think we have a control that requires us to document the objectives for responsible development. So as I alluded to earlier, so when we are documenting the AI objectives, similar to that, when we are documenting the objectives for developing the model, one needs to keep in mind which specific ethical AI principles really matter to to a specific use case, and it's important to mention that as a model development and design process, one needs to take care and one needs to ensure that the principles are always very similar. Instead of SDLC, think of it like an MDLC process where we have to document the different stages and the different phases in the model development life cycle, what approvals or sign-offs are required at every phase or every stage before we move to the next stage as such. What are the specific change management procedures that will be followed? What sign-offs are required before the model is actually deployed? All of this really needs to be documented as a part of the model development process. Secure coding is very, very important. Here is where we need to ensure that the security of the system is not compromised at any step. So what are some of the secure coding rules that has to be followed is also something that it's good to mention as a part of the process. The next two controls in the standard are very related. The first one is actually where one has to identify and document the system requirements. So what are really the functional system requirements that's really coming in from the user for the AI system. Now, as a part of the system requirements, we have to document the specific ethical principles that have to be met or that has to be addressed in that specific system based on the use case as such. Next up, the next control in this area is about system design. Uh, Again, having the right system design is very, very critical. We might have the right training data, but if the system design is not appropriate, then yeah, that could again lead to erroneous results. So this control ensures that the correct architecture and correct system design is used for the whole AI system before you proceed with development as such. Um, Again, as a part of the system design process, that needs to include various details on how the model is going to be trained and what's the machine learning approach or what's the algorithmic approach that's going to be taken. So it's important to kind of define and call out all of this as a part of the system design process as such. All right. So once the system is actually developed, we need to go through a very extensive verification and validation process. Now, we are all familiar with software testing, right? A software or an application needs to be tested thoroughly before it's deployed into production. So similar to that, when it comes to AI systems, the model verification and validation is very, very important. In my opinion, if we look at all of the controls mentioned within the ISO standard, this is probably a very, very critical or one of the most important controls as such. And also in my experience, in talking to companies, this is also a very difficult control to implement as such. The reason being, there is not a lot of published guidance as we speak as to what is the appropriate level of testing or appropriate level of verification that needs to happen for a model. How do you know what testing is sufficient? How do you know what type of test is good enough? So it's really up to an organization or up to a company to define a verification plan or define a test plan as to what are the different types of tests that will have to be conducted, or what are the different ways in which a model has to be validated before it's deployed to production. What are some of the key metrics and thresholds that have to be met before one decides that, okay, this model is good enough and it's ready to go to production as such. So having an evaluation plan or having a test plan is very, very important as such. And this test plan needs to be detailed enough to cover data like what type of test data would be used, and how are we specifically ensuring that the ethical AI principles are being met. We need to design unique and specialized tests as such to ensure that uh, the AI principles are actually being met and addressed before we move a model or move a system into production for use by larger set of users. So some of the examples of tests that are being used are like fairness tests, basically where we try to feed a model with different kinds of data to ensure that it's not only accurate, it's fair. And another important or related metric that's usually looked at for AI systems is precision. So which means, if I test it 20 times, I have to get the fair and accurate output almost 20 out of 20 times. If it gives me the accurate output only 10 out of 20 times, that's probably not good enough. We want systems to be precise. We want systems to be consistent and work in the appropriate way. And I'm also going to touch a little bit upon adversarial AI testing and red teaming. These are very important from a security aspect, and also a lot of times, you can have imposters who are trying to confuse the system with maybe a random set of outputs and cause it to go wrong, or try to induce bias or make the errors introduce errors as such. So it's very, very important that we do a lot of adversarial AI testing, which is nothing but basically trying to feed the AI system with a set of random inputs, set of junk inputs, to see that is the system able to handle this in an appropriate way. And not only that, sometimes these inputs would look valid, but may not really be relevant or make sense. So is the system still able to handle all of that? and no errors are introduced in that process. That's something that we have to ensure. So again, the model verification and validation is a very important step. Uh, you need to go beyond the traditional functional testing or traditional user acceptance testing that we normally do for softwares or applications. And we have to design a lot of specialized and a lot of complex tests as such to ensure that the various ethical principles of AI were actually met by that system before we decide, okay, this is ready to go into production. Again, with AI, the risks are very high, the stakes are very high. So I would think that companies need to spend a lot of time at this stage, do more detailed testing and validation as such in every possible way before moving ahead and deploying it to production. All right, so now when AI is deployed to production, it is already in production, but it's important to keep monitoring it. So model monitoring is a very important step. And yes, the 42001 standard includes several controls in the operations and monitoring phase as well to ensure that the system is continuing to work appropriately. Now let's start with deployment. We talked about testing. So the standard requires companies to document a detailed deployment plan. So this deployment plan is more of a checklist that includes certain KPIs, or it includes certain metrics that has to be absolutely met before we actually deploy a model into production. Human in the loop. This is something that I always recommend and I always talk about. So human in the loop is a very interesting concept that people talk about when it comes to AI. What it really means is that um, one needs to have very granular and very precise control about what is really being deployed into production, and there needs to be some sort of human control even after the system is deployed into production. For whatever reason, if the system is not working the way it's supposed to work, we need to be able to roll back either specific features or specific changes or bugs that really went into the system. And it always needs to be precisely controlled by a human. Again, because of the dangers that AI systems really have, it really needs to have a lot of human touch and human control at all times. That is something that we have to keep in mind as such. Okay, system operations and monitoring. Now, as we've been talking all about it, AI system risks are very different. So we have to monitor for certain unique parameters, or unique metrics that we don't look at in the context of traditional software. So what is really called AI observability metrics are things like accuracy of the output, precision out the output. Is there any bias that has crept in? Is there any drift in the training data? Is there any drift in the output? What are some of the expected error rates as such? So these are all certain, I would like to say, additional or more complex monitoring that AI systems need to be subjected to. Now we are familiar with, like a cloud security posture monitoring tool or a data security posture monitoring tool. But however, when it comes to AI, we need to go over above and beyond what existing tools or existing monitoring that we already have. Because a security incident management system is not going to be able to tell us if there is bias, or it's not going to be able to tell us if the error rates have increased. So that's why AI systems and AI applications require more specialized monitoring. They need to be looked at with more AI observability related tools as such. And not just that, one needs to set up alerts at the right phase. In case the system goes wrong, or in case certain thresholds are breached, the appropriate individuals needs to be alerted to be able to respond to it and to be able to fix it in the right manner. Uh, Last but not the least, the last control in this domain is about system logging. Logging needs to be enabled at all layers. We talked about how, in the data management or data governance layer, we need to have logging as to what is happening with the raw data. Not just that, even during the training phase, or even after models have been deployed to production, we need to have appropriate logging mechanisms and logging tools so that this really helps us troubleshoot and also helps us provide that traceability or transparency as to what is really happening under the scenes and under the hood to understand how systems are working. All right, kind of moving into the summary. What is the future of 42001 and actually operationalizing ethical AI? How is it really going to help us? There's really a growing need for AI governance. Companies do realize the importance of having the right guardrails and safeguards in place as they are building more and more powerful and complex AI systems. So 42001 helps provide a strong baseline framework. Implementing 42001 standard gives you a very strong foundation, if you will, so that tomorrow, if there are any additional requirements or if any new country comes up with a new requirement, 42001 has already given you a solid foundation or solid base so that it's going to become easier to just implement any incremental needs or incremental requirements on top of it. So 42001 has a strong set of controls which can serve as a starting point for companies to build their AI governance program from. Now, again, as of this point, it's the first of its kind standard that companies can get certified with. Now, a lot of companies have responsible AI principles that have been published out there. A lot of companies say that they are using and building AI in a responsible manner. But how do we know? How do we know they're doing the right thing? Again, if an organization gets certified against 42001, and that is a way for them to show to their stakeholders, which could include their customers, their users, their prospective customers, their investors, that responsible AI principles are not just principles just published out there, but they're actually walking the talk. And 42001 standard certification is a great way for companies to show that, yeah, they are committed to responsible AI. And it really helps you build trust and confidence with your customers, users, and stakeholders as such. Um, Now think of a case where a company actually wants to use a third-party AI tool, but when you're really buying and implementing an AI tool in your environment, how do you know that tool is accurate? How do you know that tool is not giving you incorrect results or there is no bias in the way the tool works? So again, that's why 42001 comes into play. So it is very important and will continue to play a more broader role in vendor risk assessments going forward, because companies will start using AI-based tools and AI-based technologies more and more. So before you just buy and deploy a AI system, knowing that that AI system is 42001 standard goes a long way in giving that confidence and giving that assurity that it is built in a very ethical way, it is developed, and there is a strong management system out there. So 42001 standard will play a key role in vendor management and vendor risk assessment, and it could also become, probably a mandatory requirement going forward. Uh, yeah, like I said, it's going to help us comply with key regulations like the EU AI Act and any federal and state legislations out there, because 42001 requires companies to also document what are the legal obligations they have in the jurisdictions that they operate. Last but not the least, early adopter advantage is very, very important. Now, always in the world of compliance, complying early to something it gives a company that reputational advantage. It gives you that key advantage when you sell with your competitors. And in a very critical area like AI, early adopter advantage is gold. And I think it's really important, and companies are encouraged to start implementing the 42001 standard and get certified against that sooner than later. Because it gives you a strong baseline framework. It helps you address a lot of these ethical principles in a very systematic and structured manner. And last but not the least, it helps you build trust and increase confidence with customers and stakeholders. Yeah, so with that, that is really the end of my prepared slide. And yeah, so back to you, Valona, to see if we've received any questions or, happy to take some questions at this point of time. Yeah. Valona?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah?
Okay, sorry for that. So I said thank you for the session and all the valuable information that you shared with us. I know there's a lot more to say about this topic and to discuss about it, but we have a limited time. So this is
Yeah.
why we have dedicated a Q&A session. And I have chosen some questions that we received. And the first one says, how can organizations balance the need for transparency in AI with the potential risks of exposing proprietary algorithms or sensitive data?
Yeah. So again, so when we say transparency, that is not about actually exposing your algorithm or actually divulging what logic. It's basically trying to understand, how did a system come up with a specific output, just trying to understand what were the important training data that was being considered, and what was the importance given to different types of training data in coming up with an output. Just having that kind of mind map, if you will, wherein you have various types of source data coming in, just trying to understand that which type or kind of data is more important than the other. It's having that high level understanding, or having, sharing that information on how it's really designed to work at a high level. That's really what transparency and explainability is. Just telling your users that, okay, I consider these five types of data. Data type 1, 2, and 3 were given more priority than data type 4 and 5. So in that way, the users can understand that uh, the relevant and appropriate type of information was considered in making a decision. And this is not about actually, like publishing your algorithm or showing the code or anything like that, like a lot of people might have that misconception. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. There's also another question. What role do external audits and third-party assessments play in ensuring compliance with the standard, and how can they improve the overall trust in AI systems?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, 42001 can be used in two ways. It can be used as a part of offense or defense. So when I say offense, uh, a company can get certified against 42001 and showcase to their users and help build trust. So just by saying that a company is compliant with 42001, it really helps improve its brand value, reputation, and improves its profitability, because customers prefer trust. Customers want to go with companies who hold these certifications and standards when the features are pretty much similar. So that's really where external audits come into play, to make sure that companies are actually certified with 42001. Now, when it comes to third-party risk assessment, like I said, uh, if a company wants to buy a AI solution or an AI software, as a part of the detailed vendor risk assessment questionnaire or vendor risk assessment process, I think it's important for them to ask that, okay, do you have a 42001 standard in place? Because when you know that a company has a 42001 certification, that really increases your confidence that they are doing the right things, and they're adhering to the appropriate principles.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you once again, Varun, for this incredible webinar, and thank you everyone for taking the time and being with us today. We appreciate everyone for signing in. For more updates on our upcoming webinars, please check our LinkedIn and Facebook accounts. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.